about procurement of petrol? Do you have to pay from your pocket? Because people have been asking that question and say, if I have to buy petrol, which is so expensive, I have to tighten my belt. Couldn't you, borrowing the word from the president, for me to buy that petrol for 141 naira a litre? The government officials, are they also buying from their own monies?
Or from the budgetary provisions that they've got?
Government officials for government business, it is government that buys a petrol for government business. If I use my car many times when I'm off duty, I buy my own petrol. So I think that's another thing. I mean, there was in the debate somebody said that they were trying to accuse Sanusi, when last did he buy petrol. There was a time in Abuja, I was in the petrol queue driving my own car as a minister, and you could see necks craning. People looking, is it really a minister that is in the queue for petroleum? I mean, I think people should not generalize.
Okay, but
by coming back to the issue of the pricing, again, I think the analogy with essential commodities. In those days, if you are well connected in government, you got your sugar, you got your this thing cheaply, but the ordinary man still had to go and buy his salt and sugar in the market. The same with fertilizer distribution today. The average farmer doesn't get his highly so-called subsidized fertilizer. Unfortunately, the mess in the system is those who are well connected. Now, it's the same thing with the petroleum thing.
All right.
As you know, there are many parts of this country where this 65 naira price that we are talking about only happens in a few...
That's a failure of governments and regulatory agencies.
Yes.
The blame still goes back to government on that one. But the government meets with economists on this, because we have Professor Tome here, who just flatly faulted the model that the government is adopting. Because if you just remove subsidy as it is now, he says years to come, we're going to come back and start grappling with this, as we always have been doing from time.
But that's why I say it's not just about the removal of subsidy. It's really transforming, reforming the whole structure, the whole market in which this thing is being done. First of all, by the removal and allowing market forces to work. People say, I've had people, I'm an economist, I'm very much interested in simple laws of demand and supply. People say Nigerian economy is somehow different from other economies. These things don't work. It's not true. It actually works. You go out in the market there. When something is selling, against salt and sugar, go to the market. If it's selling for so much a mudu or a cup, put your own on the side and double the price and see whether anybody will buy. They won't buy. Now, it's the same principle. In the telecom sector, when the reform was done, I think everybody will agree that the reform in the telecom sector has been pretty successful. There are still issues of quality of service and so on and so forth. But
even legal issues too, which
there are legal issues. But this
that is not fully completed, as they argue.
Yeah, but people will accept that at least considerable progress has been made. We are away from that period when NITEL held all of us here by the throat.
Yeah, but
in the aviation industry, I was... Maybe some of you are younger, you didn't experience it. At a time when you get your boarding pass, you have a booking, you have to struggle to run up the flight of stairs to board. Even after getting in, you may find somebody is already seated on the seat.
Those are services or commodities that, not every Nigerian, you can do without them. I can afford to say, I just don't want to fly. I know of a friend, she doesn't fly. She has money because she doesn't want to fly. She goes by road. But you really cannot do without petrol. That's what people are talking about. So when we talk about NITEL days, you could also, till this moment, do without the telephone. But the petrol in our national life, in every facet of our national life, you get to see the petrol. There's either transportation, to fuel, to power your house, one thing or the other. That is why everyone is about this particular issue. And that is why, we're good enough you're here. Chamberlain actually started by asking about the planning, which is what we want to call palliatives, that people have been asking to see. Yesterday on our News at 10, the TUC president did say that 1,600 buses that the government is laying claim to is truly not the palliatives, that if ordered those buses long before the petroleum issue came.
Well, I'm very happy, in fact, that you have raised this issue. And just like Peter Esele was in that committee that he was talking about during Erado's time, I was a member of that committee. And he knows that we started talking about these palliatives right from that time. And what in fact happened was that government actually moved very rapidly to implement the palliatives even before the decision. So today when people are saying, but you are not, so the 1,600 buses were part of what was discussed, and government set up the proper machinery to ensure that the buses were imported. We even looked at the failure in the past of government-run bus companies and had a new structure where we brought in the labor unions. They set up their own thing, and even that now is being improved because it's being channeled through the Urban Development Bank. So first of all, the first 1,600 buses were actually part of the old decision about deregulation. The second thing is that
who actually procured those buses? Is it Labour, TUC, or government, or federal government?
Well, federal government set up the mechanism, the processes that will ensure that those buses are got and they are run efficiently.
So they're not paying for it.
It's a World Bank funded project,
yes,
isn't it?
No. You see, the whole purpose of even now, what is happening is that through the Urban Development Bank, a facility is being put in place to enable all well-organized transporters, because you have to be careful. We have tried government-run transportation companies in this country. You go around the states and you see carcasses of publicly used money to buy these buses, and within a few months they are down. So we're trying to avoid that. And what is happening is you create the environment where organized people who have a track record of running transport companies, you are facilitating for them to get cheap money. Yes, it's loans, but the current practice is at just 5% interest rate. There is nowhere you get money today at 5% interest rate in this environment. But in fact, the subsequent one, what we are discussing now, is even at literally no interest. Just some administrative. So basically, and what we also did, there are also new buses, 30-seater and above, over 700. We scouted the whole market of what is available now in the country.
So what's the transport model, the management structure? Is it they just get buses, flood them in the states, and that's it?
Get buses in the hands of people who have the experience to run them, flood the market with them. But that's the road transport.
Yeah, but would anything have gone wrong if these had been done before this announcement?
But I've told you, even, the thing is that they have been done. The 1,600 buses that were earlier procured were all part of the initial discussion that we have been having.
So let them arrive first.
No, but they are in the country, the 700. Sometimes it's always difficult, especially in this country, to get everything synchronized to the finest hour and the finest thing. Now, that is the roadside. I think people should also look at what is happening with the railway. Because really, unless we address rail transport and water transport, especially in terms of moving goods and services, two additional critical things that are being done. The rehabilitation of the railways. For example, the Lagos-Kano line. Already services immediately will resume between Kano and Minna, and then between Lagos and Jeba. The problem is in between Jeba and Minna, there is one critical area where the regular washoffs of a bridge. Okay. And that is what is being attended by a construction company that will finish this thing by February, March. So by March, you will have the Kano-Lagos line running.
Right. Is this whole fuel subsidy removal or reinvestment, as government argues, is it about cutting cost? Because if it is, what is government doing about cutting the cost of governance?
First of all, it is not principally about cutting costs. It's about cutting costs as well. But it is principally about getting the system to work efficiently in such a way that resources are not diverted to areas where they are not needed, or they are diverted to areas of greater need. Because if we can recover these resources and then implement this subsidy, reinvestment, and empowerment program that addresses the bigger areas